This week on the show, we're going to take a look at a recent CNBC article that describes some of the problems that Etsy is having. We've got some reselling news from eBay, Poshmark, and more. What is up, Galaxians? Welcome to episode number 248 of the Galaxy CDs, Rocks, and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and I will be your host as we cover some reselling news updates from eBay, Poshmark. The United States Postal Service is in the reselling news yet once again, but we're going to kick it off with a kind of a dive into a topic that we have been covering here over the last several months, the ongoing problems over at Etsy. So interesting article at CNBC. So we're going to go over that. And then, of course, in the back half of the show, we will have the What Sold update. Timestamps will be in the video description and the show notes down below if you want to go to a particular segment of the show. With that, let's get into this reselling news.
News updates.
So Etsy's situation, their problems, their dramas have bubbled beyond just resellers being interested in it. Obviously, they're a publicly traded company now, so this is something that causes concern among other people. But CNBC last week ran an article that is also accompanied by a video, which is available on YouTube, which is where I actually first saw this. There will be links, of course, to this in the show notes and the video description below, along with all of the news that we cover today. So if you want to go read about it yourself, you can do that. The article titled, Etsy is trying to recreate pandemic-era sales. Here's where it's having trouble. Etsy boomed during the pandemic, but now it's at a crossroads. Here's why is the title of the video. Again, it's linked in this article, and it's also available separately on YouTube. E-commerce artisan marketplace Etsy is at a crossroads as it tries to balance declining gross merchandise sales, a tumbling stock price, and high inflation with the needs of its 7 million sellers. The article points out after a big increase in both buyers and spending per buyer during COVID, it looks like they've hit a wall, said Jason Helfstein, a managing director at Oppenheimer & Co. We already went over their first quarter results a couple of weeks ago. They were disappointing. As this article says, gross merchandise sales, or GMS, fell. Its consolidated marketplace revenue was flat with year-over-year growth of just 0.8%, and the company's net income was $63 million, which compared unfavorably with $74.5 million in the same quarter the year prior. Shares sank 15%. We're going to get to that bit a little later in this review. Etsy CEO Josh Silverman attributed the tough quarter to consumers' continued reduction in discretionary spending, which is something that I've been talking about on this show that goes back prior to probably fourth quarter last year when I talked about the credit crunch. Everybody has like massive credit card debt. The percentage of car payments that are now over $1,000 a month is significant. People's mortgages, interest is higher. There's so many headwinds, not to mention inflation and all the rest. There's just a lot of headwinds against companies and sellers who are selling things that would fall under kind of discretionary income. So this is not something that should have come as a surprise to a CEO at a company the size of Etsy when we've been talking about it here on this show going back probably 6 months. But anyway, that made it harder than we expected to bend the curve, he said, which was disappointing. Those challenges stand in stark contrast to Etsy's performance less than 3 years ago. The COVID pandemic brought Etsy new customers and a massive sales boost. Its stock price reached an all-time high at that point of $296.91 back on November 24th of 2021. Gross merchandise sales grew a whopping 106.7% year over year in 2020. An additional 31.2% in 2021. The number of active users on Etsy platform has increased almost 70% since 2019, but purchases haven't followed. As of the first quarter, the site had 91.6 million active buyers and 7 million active sellers. It looks like there were one-time purchases in 2021 that just did not repeat, said Helfstein. I talked about that, I'm pretty sure, at the time. So during the pandemic, what really fueled this boom for both individual sellers and for Etsy was primarily masks. I talked about it at the time. It was great. It was going to be a good run, but it was going to be short-lived. The pandemic was either going to come to an end or people were just going to get tired of wearing masks. I'll let you decide which of those two things killed off the mask business, but that was never going to last. And Etsy, because it is a craft and artisanal site, I feel like there's probably a cap on how much business can actually do, you as an individual. And if you sell on Etsy, feel free to comment in the comments down below. If you're watching on YouTube, there's only so many things that you can make of a particular item in a given time frame. So unless they can attract significantly more sellers, and we'll get into that a little further on in this review, there's a cap on how much stuff they can sell, because there's a cap on how much you as an individual artist can actually create. The question the article poses is, what is the Etsy story? Artisans point to other long-term changes they say have altered Etsy's culture and affected their sales, such as higher transaction fees. Fees have gone up a couple of times over the last 3 or 4 years over on Etsy, and programs that push them to pay for ads, offer free shipping, or respond to every message within 24 hours. I don't know how that actually affects your sales anything but positively if you do the customer service bit and reach out to customers who have questions in a short amount of time. But the other things are certainly affect your bottom line as a seller. Their push to have you pay for ads, their push for their off-site ad program, which, to be fair, is pretty successful. I would venture to say maybe a third of my transactions on Etsy are courtesy of that off-site ad program. I'm not particularly pleased about an extra 15%. I don't think it's that valuable, but that's another discussion. They find themselves having less and less of the money from when they have a sale, but having to do more and more work, not even in their craft of the thing that they make, but just to make their Etsy shop work for them, said Chiara Lohr, executive director of the Indie Sellers Guild and a former Etsy seller. There is a link to watch this video where they go into a lot more details. This article is kind of essentially a teaser to get you to go watch the video. Again, I'll leave the link in the article below. But a couple of things they really hit on in that video that but particularly affect sellers. Number one is the rampant, and this goes back to Etsy's attempt to weed out some of the counterfeiting and some of the trademark infringement stuff. But there are a lot of sellers who create actual legitimate items who are finding those items delisted by Etsy, and in some cases finding their accounts suspended or terminated by Etsy. And there's very little recourse. It's very difficult for a lot of these sellers to actually get in touch with a human being at Etsy who can help them resolve their situation. I just watched a video yesterday, a seller who has been selling tarot art. He creates his own, it's like a black cat tarot. He's created all this art, and then he created a deck of tarot cards from his own art. He's been successfully selling these cards for ages, and suddenly, without warning, Etsy delisted him, and he can't get an explanation why. He can't get any assistance from Etsy. It's his best-selling item. It's just a mess, and this is something that has gone on continually and in increasing numbers over on Etsy, which makes it very, very difficult. That ties in, again, to their attempt to kind of weed out some of the stuff that some sellers have termed the junkification of Etsy. If you do a search for virtually anything on Etsy, your search result page is going to be filled with knockoffs, copies, AI-generated art. There is so much stuff that appears on Etsy that, number one, it's very difficult for you as an actual artisan. And again, if you're a seller on Etsy of that type of stuff, I sell vintage books there, so I don't really have that problem, other than my stuff sometimes is still buried under all of that kind of just random stuff because their search engine just isn't super accurate. But getting your work seen is one issue altogether. But from a buyer perspective, if I'm looking for something and I type it into the search engine and I see this just wall of AI art and junk, I'm not necessarily inclined to go through 5 or 6 or 8 pages of stuff trying to find something that looks like it was actually created by an individual artist and is not some kind of random AI generated thing. So that is a problem. Lots of drop shipping, print on demand. To their credit, Etsy has talked about they're going to make an effort to be a lot more clear about what you can and cannot sell on their platform. So hopefully that helps, but I'm not convinced that it helps Etsy necessarily in the long term, because the last thing is, as one of the analysts points out in the video, as a publicly traded company, Etsy's primary responsibility is to create shareholder value. And the way that they do that is to find a way to increase sales. And I think they've caught themselves in a bit of a catch-22 that having these people with this AI art gives them more, in theory, more opportunity to make more sales. And I don't know how they get themselves out of that. It seems like their plan, at least initially, is to try to cut that stuff back to allow more room for actual traditional sellers to perform well on their site. But again, as I said at the outset of this particular segment, I feel like there's a cap on how much stuff actual individual artists can create, which puts some kind of a cap on what Etsy can, under normal circumstances, sell and produce. Now, obviously, with the pandemic, you had this big one-time boom of masks, but that's an outlier. That's one-off, and I'm not sure let's not have another pandemic to find out if that's repeatable. So I don't know. One of the people in the video makes the comment, something to the effect of, should Etsy have ever gone public? And I think that ship obviously has sailed, but I think that is a very valid question. I understand why they did it, why all these companies do it. And to be fair, I'm not sure many, if any, of these reselling platforms are nailing this. I mean, the eBay experience, sellers aren't particularly thrilled. Buyers aren't particularly thrilled. Their sales are flat. Their stock isn't doing that well. Poshmark sellers are constantly complaining about the amount of work they have to do to share their closets and the fees that they paid. Really, probably the closest is Amazon, who has, by and large, a really good customer experience. Their stock price is fantastic, but they have done that at the expense of their third-party sellers, who have increasingly squeezed for fees. They've implemented new stock policies with penalties and extra fees on both ends. So while they're making money and satisfying customers, it is probably, from people I talk to, it sounds like one of the least satisfactory seller experiences in the space. So again, you can let me know in the comments what you think of that. I feel like maybe the best option for Etsy is that some really artsy-minded rich person comes along and buys the company and takes it private, because there is money to be made there, but I'm not sure that they will ever be able to satisfy institutional investors and that sort of thing. So again, let me know down in the comments below, if you're watching on YouTube, what your thoughts are on the situation over at Etsy and their continued struggles. Continuing on with Etsy, this was updated on the 23rd of May. The old listing form retires on June 25th. This has been coming for what feels like a year. They introduced a new listing form, I think, in beta some time ago. They're trying to get everybody transitioned over to that, and now you're going to have to. On June 25th, we say goodbye to the old listing form. After years of service, the old form is retiring and will no longer be available. Don't worry, you won't miss any of your favorite features, they say. The updated listing form has evolved. Thanks to feedback from sellers like you, the updated form is streamlined and now has everything you need to save time. If you haven't tried it already, no action is needed to make the switch, because they're just going to shut it off. It is available. You can, and probably a lot of people are already using it. It has undergone numerous changes and updates since it was first introduced. So to Etsy's credit, they are trying to make that thing work. You can confidently list your items with these time-saving features. Scroll no more. Navigation tabs help you quickly jump to sections of your listing details faster, they say, and more seamlessly. You can optimize smarter. The Performance tab displays performance data and reviews for your listing, make it easier to decide what types of edits to make. You can get a sneak peek. A listing preview lets you double-check your edits before publishing live. And new, you can skip the mental math. There's a profit calculator that helps you efficiently estimate your profits while pricing your items. If you've been using this form for a long time over on Etsy, like I said, it's been available for quite some time. Let us all know in the comments what you think of it. I have not actually been using it. I guess I need to switch and get it figured out before they force me to next month. They say it's only getting better. The updated listing form allows us to develop new features you want 3 times faster. With just one modernized form, you'll soon see more insights and exciting features based on your suggestions. This is just one way we're investing in your shop's success. Again, to go back to the previous segment, they are trying. I give Etsy credit. They've got a lot of problems. There's a lot of things going on, but at least there is some effort there. Seller side in particular, again, major problems. Sellers getting banned, shops getting shut down, items getting delisted. That's got to be fixed and addressed. But they are making some inroads into making the seller experience a little better. Take this opportunity, they say, to optimize. Again, no action is needed. However, now is a great time to jump in and enhance your listings in the updated form with its new features. There's a handy link to the Optimize Your Listings Now section. So there you go. That's going on over at Etsy, coming in June. Speaking of June, eBay just announced their summer seller check-in. Summer's heating up, and so is our next seller check-in event. We're thrilled to invite you to our summer seller check-in, where you can learn how to give your eBay business a boost with the latest tools and strategies. This summer, we'll be diving into eBay's integrated tools and strategies to help your business flourish. Mark your calendars. It's Thursday, June 6th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. Join eBay leaders and sellers virtually on Thursday, June 6th to learn more about the latest features, news, and updates. Are you ready to make your eBay store shine? There's a link where you can reserve your spot in the meeting, so you can get to that. Don't miss out on, they say, exclusive product announcements, latest feature updates, live Q&A with eBay experts, valuable seller networking opportunities, the chances to win awesome eBay swag, and much more. There will also be some breakout sections. Getting started with Fitment Plus, which I believe is automotive. How to ensure your summer success, which would be good because we all know there's a summer slowdown on eBay. eBay International Shipping Service updates. A quick programming alert. That is going to be Wednesdays live. I'm going to talk about international shipping, both on Etsy and how to set that up, and eBay's international shipping program. So mark that on your calendar. The live reseller chat and this quick tutorial Wednesday at 11 Eastern Time. And eBay Seller Success, the latest selling tools, updates, and improvements. Get ready to elevate your store to new heights by registering for the Summer Seller Check-in. Again, June 6th at 12 p.m. Pacific Time. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. eBay is going to integrate their PSA authentication and grading by the summer. eBay and PSA, a third-party authentication and grading provider for collectibles, will launch a new, quote, seamless end-to-end experience, unquote, for trading card collectors. Back in April, as we talked about, eBay and PSA's parent Collectors had announced they were entering into a series of transactions which officially closed back on May 16th. As part of the deal, eBay acquired Collector's Golden Auction House for trading cards and collectibles, which eBay said would enhance existing marketplace offerings by expanding the range and inventory available to customers and opening up an expansive new audience for Golden consigners. eBay said it would provide a more well-rounded collecting experience across price points. This article, which I believe is on E-commerce Bytes, yes, says it will be interesting to see if eBay will be able to leverage a Netflix show starring Ken Golden, who is the founder, and CEO of Golden Auctions, and vice versa. Season 2 of King of Collectibles, The Golden Touch, will stream on Netflix beginning June 12th. Netflix did publish a trailer, which is available on YouTube. There is a link here. eBay also sold their Vault, which they launched 2 years ago, to PSA as part of that deal. eBay Vault offered to physically store trading cards for buyers and sellers. This concept of vaults for storing these collectibles had already been established before eBay did theirs. While popular among certain type of collectors, in his column for E-commerce Bytes, Don Hayden explained at the time why some feared that turning collectibles into an investment would artificially increase the costs of collecting. I think that's probably one of the reasons that card collecting has gotten expensive over the years. PSA, they note, is going to fold their Vault services along with eBay's Vault program into a newly branded offering, still with details to come, which is what they said back in April. So they have not kind of ground this thing out yet, how they want to handle it. eBay wrote in their press release that a new enhanced customer experience would launch this summer with a suite of features to offer more seamless transactions and extensive database insight for collectors. Among these features will be the following. They will integrate real-time transaction data and PSA population report data directly into listings for relevant collectibles, providing buyers with a clear understanding of an item's rarity, grading distribution, and importantly, pricing. This can help buyers make a more informed decision by understanding how many items of a similar grade are in existence, while access to consolidated pricing data enables smarter buying, selling, and trading decisions. They also said customers would be able to scan graded trading cards with an image-based listing capability, giving them the ability to populate new listings with greater speed and accuracy, including attributes such as the certification number, product, set, year, team, player, and various features. Collectors CEO Nat Turner said in the announcement, reducing friction for hobbyists at every step in the collecting journey is always a key goal of ours, and combining efforts and strengths with an industry leader like eBay allows us to effectively address each of those steps. As a collector of myself, he went on, the idea of being able to grade a card with PSA, then utilize the vault to either store it securely or make it available to other collectors on eBay is an instant major win for everyone who participates in this hobby. So that's going to be going on over the summer. Further details to come on how the vault is going to be integrated and work. But if you are a trading card collector and seller, we've talked about this before. All of this is in the works. These companies are making a big partnership push. Poshmark recently announced Promoted Closet. This is a pretty extensive article, but the gist of it is Promoted Closet is now available to the entire community of U.S. sellers. Last year, Promoted Closet Beta was launched. I'm pretty sure we talked about that on this show. To give sellers another tool for increasing their sales to the most interested shoppers on Poshmark, thousands of sellers from the community joined the beta program to share feedback, ideas for new features, and stories on how it has increased their closet traffic and sales. They say it is a simple tool that promotes your listings to over millions of shoppers on Poshmark looking for items like yours on high visibility places like search results and brand pages. Our goal, they said, is to empower you with the best seller tools for driving more shoppers to your listings and ultimately to make more sales. Today, we are excited to invite the entire Poshmark community in the U.S., note that it's in the U.S. only, to sign up for Promoted Closet access by joining the waiting list. So there is going to be a bit of a delay before you can use this. We will be continually granting access on a rolling basis to ensure a quality experience. So they don't want to just let everybody in at once and overwhelm their servers and their service, so it will be a rolled out experience. For a limited time, first-time promoting sellers entered into the program will be given a free 1-week trial to experience Promoted Closet risk-free. There's a link to learn more about it. They talk about it's a simple tool, marketing tool to help you stand out to millions of shoppers. You can increase shopper engagement. Their stats show that sellers who promote saw an average of 80% increase in engagement. They saw increased sales by 43%. And of course, using this program, you get access to performance data so you can see how your program is working. Essentially, there's a tutorial here, how it works. There's an introduction, how you navigate it, how you manage your promotions. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to set a weekly budget, and then Poshmark will promote your listings, your closet, to what they feel are relevant potential shoppers. If a potential shopper clicks your link, you will have a charge against that budget, whatever you set, $5 a week, $15 a week, whatever the number is. They don't specify here what the cost per click is. I tried to find it. I was unsuccessful. If you were in the beta, feel free to comment down below. What kind of cost per click were you seeing? Was this, they say you got a big sales increase using this. Did you find that the sales increase was more than enough to cover the cost of the clicks? Because obviously the conversion rate on these is typically quite low. So again, if you're a Poshmark seller, and I know I've got a few of you out there, and you've used this, let me know how it worked. But it looks like a really interesting program. They are all, like we just talked about at the beginning, Etsy runs their offsite program. They're trying to get you to do ads. Now you've got this. eBay has Promoted Listings Standard, Promoted Listings Advanced, and now they're doing an offsite ad program, which they are also giving away free credits for. So if you want to try that, I know I saw on Instagram the other day, Colorado Reworn is trying that, and she's going to be posting her results to Instagram so you can see how successful that program was for her. So there's a lot of, again, this is a way for these sites to incrementally increase their bottom line by getting more money from you and I. And ultimately, if it leads to more sales for you and I, it's probably worth the expenditure. In some cases, The results I've seen haven't really indicated that it has been worthwhile. You can let me know what your experience is. I talked about a month ago, I had a sale using Etsy's offsite ad program that ended up costing me money to complete because the item was going overseas and the shipping was enormously expensive. So it can be a little hit or miss. Last thing in the news. This is the gift that just keeps giving. The United States Postal Service has received yet another letter from Congress. Lawmakers are asking them to block, asking the regulators, easy for me to say, to block DeJoy's latest price hikes. So the ones we've been talking about for the last month or so, in particular, the one they're really bothered about is first class stamps. But I assume this would apply to media mail rates, which would make the statement I made last week about ground advantage not increasing, making that more competitive with media mail rates. If this actually happens, you can scratch that because everything will just stay the same. USPS is pursuing its largest rate increases since DeJoy became Postmaster General. House Democrats are asking the U.S. Postal Service's regulator to block its latest proposed price hike, saying another increase would threaten the future of the mailing agency. They announced last month that they were planning in July to raise the cost of a first-class stamp to 73 cents from 68 cents. The increases, if approved by the Postal Regulatory Commission, would mark the sixth hike under Postmaster DeJoy's tenure and a 31% spike in the cost of a stamp since he took office. We've talked about that. They announced, and to be fair, they told everybody in advance this is what was going to happen. Every 6 months, they were going to review pricing and ask for an increase. So this isn't surprising, but when coupled with, as we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, the degradation in the level of service, it's hard to convince people to pay more for a less productive and less efficient service. So you can, of course, let me know what you think of that. They have begun raising prices on this biannual basis, and DeJoy has tapped into the authority he won back in 2020 to increase prices more than the rate of inflation on nearly every allowable occasion. Representatives Jamie Raskin, Jerry Connolly, Kwesi Mfume, who served as ranking members on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, that's a mouthful, and two of its panels respectively, as well as others, asked the PRC to reject the latest request on the grounds that the Postal Service is failing to meet its statutory requirement, as I just said, to maintain high-quality service standards. They noted the Commission's review of performance in fiscal 2023 found the agency missed its targets for more than half of its market-dominant products. So more than half of their classes of mail that they consider to be market-dominant, which are the ones that we're talking about here, they did not achieve their own targets. That's pretty bad. I'm no math genius, but less than 50 cents or 50% is pretty bad. The lawmaker said postal management has not given appropriate weight to the impact the rate changes would have on the general public and large-scale mail users, arguing it is instead pursuing a strategy that will drive more mail out of the system. First-class mail volume has declined 10% since 2020, though that marks the continuation of a trend that goes back nearly 2 decades. Some of that obviously is attributable just to the fact that people aren't using mail for that kind of communication anymore. Email has kind of taken the place of first-class letters in a lot of cases. I don't know how, someone brought this up in last week's video or a video I did 2 weeks ago. I don't know how the transition for what used to be first-class package into ground advantage, how are they counting those packages if those items have actually been transferred out of first class just by the nature of the removal of that, even though those packages are kind of the same thing. The volume would have dropped because those packages aren't classified as first class anymore. So I don't know how they're evaluating that, but that would certainly contribute to this number. DeJoy, for his part, countered that critique by suggesting that he cannot compete with digital and therefore it was immaterial if he expedited the inevitable loss of volume. Whether the PRC can heed the lawmakers' request is unclear, as their approval of price hikes have typically amounted to a simple checking of the math to ensure postal management adhered to the price cap formulas. We've talked about that before. It's essentially a rubber stamp as long as they have not exceeded their authority, which, as I just mentioned, he was granted broad authority to even exceed the rate of inflation with these increases. It's unclear whether they can put the brakes on this. The bipartisan effort to get PRC to block this previous price hike was unsuccessful. In recent months, the PRC, for their part, has publicly derided parts of the reform efforts and suggested he may be harming the agency. The Postmaster General has feuded with his regulator since taking office, and at a recent hearing said USPS is trending in the wrong direction. The commission last month asked the Postal Service to formally justify its network changes before the regulator. USPS, for their part, has rejected that request. The new rate system, which PRC established back in 2020, created a complicated formula for setting prices derived from factors including inflation, declining mail use, and retiree costs, which is a big part of why the post office does not make money. The post office historically has only raised its rates in line with inflation, but since 2021, he has repeatedly used this new authority to increase prices at a far faster clip. They have defended those increases by noting that they still charge less than most of its counterparts around the world, which is true. But when you're used to paying 50 odd cents for a stamp and now it's going to be 70 some cents in the span of 3 years, that's a pretty big jump if you do a lot of mailing. Postal Service has grown its revenue slightly in recent years despite volume declines due to these higher prices. So to that extent, it is working. They're generating a little more revenue even though their volume is down. As changes in the mailing and shipping marketplace continue, these price adjustments are needed to achieve the financial stability sought by the organization's Delivering for America 10-year plan, Postal Management said back in April. USPS prices remain among the most affordable in the world. We talked about this last week. Groups representing large-scale mailers are also pushing back on the latest price hike, which, as I talked about, is 25% for those mailers, saying USPS is causing significant harm to its biggest customers. That may be the case. Maybe it's just right-sizing the fees. I don't know. As a small seller, I don't have a lot of sympathy for these big companies who get these massive breaks, but that's neither here nor there. With this sixth notice of market-dominant price changes in 3 years, the Postal Service continues Titanic-esque to sail inexorably toward the iceberg, clinging to its belief that the Delivering for America plan is the panacea to its ills, notwithstanding all evidence to the contrary, said the Alliance of Nonprofit Mailers in a filing before the PRC. The Association for Postal Commerce said that while USPS is technically in compliance with the statutory price caps, it is missing the mark on other legal obligations to provide predictability and stability to its mail users. And that may be the key to get the PRC to step in and block this price increase. If they're not, as with any contract, if you're paying for a service and that service is not rendered in the manner agreed to, you as the buyer or the person who's paying for the contract have the right to get a reduction or stop payment or whatever the case is. Both sides have to fulfill their obligation. And in this case, the post office is absolutely taking the money, but they're not delivering the service that they have promised both to Congress and, more importantly, I guess, to us, the users. The groups, like the lawmakers, stress that mail delays have spiked as USPS has implemented some of these network reforms. They delivered just 84% of first-class mail on time in the first half of this fiscal year, compared to 91% in the same period last year. DeJoy did admit his agency has struggled to smoothly put his network changes into place, but vowed to quickly correct those issues. We talked about that, I think, last week. He's put this consolidation plan on pause, so they're not pushing through all of these changes. The pause is good until at least January of next year, so hopefully they get that fixed, but I would be thrilled if they stepped in and denied this price increase. So let me know what you think of any of that. That's going to wrap the reselling news for this week. If you got something out of that, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. If you are watching on YouTube, and if you're not currently a subscriber to the channel, please consider doing that as well. With that having been said, let's get into what sold. Another pretty good week here. If you follow me over at Instagram, when I posted my Saturday update, I mentioned I'd gone to several estate sales. I had a really good day sourcing on Friday, but I was at one of the sales. I'm making a mountain of books. I ended up buying, I think, 50 or 60 books at this one estate sale. And as I'm building my stack, a woman walks up to me and she says, "Nobody buys books anymore." And I just looked at her and I said, I'm selling hundreds of them a month, so I'm okay with it. I think people are actually still buying them, but thank you. Just amazing to me. I'm eternally grateful that people that don't sell, and you probably should be too, that don't sell in my category or that don't sell in your category, think that category is a waste of time because that leaves more competition out of it. And I have access. I was at this sale late in the day on the third day of the sale, and it didn't appear that the books had even been touched. I made a killing at that sale. I'm hopeful. I left them my card. There was another room actually that was full of really, really great condition, like genuine antique books, like 1800s and early 1900s era books. But this estate seller had done their research. They were asking essentially retail price for all of those. And I gave her my card and I said, hey, at the end of the sale, if all that stuff is still left and you want to do something, let me know. I can't make it work at those prices. And she said, I'm picking up what you're putting down. We'll be in touch. So we'll see. I'll let you know how that goes. So speaking of books, here's the first one of the week, Vacation and Leisure Home Plans by the Garlinghouse Company back in 1983. This is an illustrated trade paperback of housing plans from the early 1980s. I have shared these a couple of times before. Vintage old home plan books, I do pretty well with. These are ones that I picked up at an estate sale for like $1 a piece. This one sold on a outbound offer for $22.94 plus media mail shipping. This was a cool book. I probably should have kept it. I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. It is one of only 2 series of books that I have ever read more than once in my life. This was the 50th anniversary edition, illustrated hardcover in a slipcase, gold version of The Hobbit. This was I believe, Houghton Mifflin copy of this book. Really nice, illustrated, great illustrations by Tolkien himself. Really cool book. This was part of a big lot that I own for 50 cents. This sold on an outgoing offer for $23.79. I've talked about these, over the last year. Part of what I'm selling off for my brother from his warehouse, old NASA items. This was a actual typewritten press release from October 1970, the NASA press release, Apollo 14 preliminary timeline, was document number 70-166. 3 pages, typewritten on NASA letterhead in immaculate condition, very little wear, no discoloration. Really, really cool piece of NASA history. I had it listed for $29.99. I sent out an offer and it sold for $25.49 plus first class shipping. This is a fairly lightweight item. If you follow me over on Instagram, you may have seen I posted last week a copy of this book. This is a second one. Both of these actually went to the same buyer. Dave Cowan's A Biography by George Sullivan. It was from 1977. Illustrated hardcover in its dust jacket, ex-library version. This was part of my big 15,000 book lot. There were 2 copies of this book in that lot. One of them, this one, was in better condition than the other one. This was listed, I believe, at $29.99. The other one I had at $19.99. Same buyer bought the one at $19.99 and made me an offer of $25.87 on this one. So I sold 2 copies of the same book to the same buyer. 2 items that I own for less than a nickel. So I got maybe 9 cents total in these 2 books, and they sold for a combined $46 plus shipping. Nice sale. I love these old textbooks from the International Textbook Company. Mechanical Drawing, Advanced Mechanical Drawing 1 and 2. These are like 5x7 little hardcover textbooks. I picked up a whole bunch of these at a sale. They had a box of them. There were probably 40 or 50 of them. I broke them up either into individual sales or into lots of similar titles. This was 3 books that went for $33.99 in a lot. I owned them for $1 a piece, so $3 into $33.99. This sold as part of my 15% off sale that I'm running this month, so a little bit of a discount, and they're on their way. This was a cool old book. Picked this up at an estate sale not too long ago for $1. Chemistry and Technology of Wines and Liqueurs from Herstein and Gregory. This was published back in 1935, illustrated hardcover in just kind of a plain brown wrapper dust jacket. Really interesting old book about the chemistry and how they make wine and liquor. Really cool book. Picked it up for, I don't know, a couple of bucks, I guess, at an estate sale. Had it listed for, I think, $39.99. I got an offer of $34 and went ahead and accepted that. Sale over on Mercari. Picked these up at part of a closeout at an estate sale. I'm into these for 50 cents a piece. This was a 2-volume set, so I'm into it for a buck. The Bible Exposition Commentary, volumes 1 and 2 by Warren W. Wiersbe. From 1993, Victor Books hardcover with their dust jackets in pretty much immaculate condition. Again, they were 50 cents to me in a bulk buy, so a dollar turned into 36 bucks with free shipping over on Mercari. This was a neat one. This sold over on Etsy. The warehouse where I keep all my stuff, or most of my stuff, there is a tenant there who's in the process of moving out, and he knows that I sell books. And he said, as I'm cleaning out my stuff, he's just essentially a hoarder. He had half of the 3rd floor just full of stuff. He doesn't resell. He just collected stuff and left it in this warehouse. And he says, as I find books, I'll just leave them down by your door. So he's given me probably close to 80 or 100 books now at no charge. So this is free to me. Cost of goods sold, $0. The First Book of Jazz by Langston Hughes. This was a second printing by Franklin Watts, illustrated hardcover from 1955. Really unusual to find this book from that era. The book is fairly common. It's pretty readily available, but from the 1950s, not so much. Free to me. This sold over on Etsy for $54.99 plus shipping. And now your flip of the week. Those of you who were here a couple of weeks ago know I was having problems with my audio interface, so I ordered a new one. For those of you who keep score of that kind of stuff at home, I've upgraded to the Rodecaster Pro 2, and part of the promotion on that deal was that you essentially got a free set of headphones, the Rode NTH100M professional over-ear headset with microphone. I've got 4 microphones already, a headset that I really like, so I really had no use for this thing. So I listed it for, I think originally for $149.99. I marked it down to $129.99. I did get a watcher on it. I sent out an offer, and ultimately I sold these for $116.99 from a cost of goods sold of $0. So that definitely qualifies as the flip of the week. And that's going to wrap another episode. Thank you all, as always, for spending a little bit of time with me. Hope you got something out of this. And if you did, please do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber to the channel or a follower of the podcast, please consider doing that as well. Again, join me on Wednesday. We'll be doing a live kind of a Q&A chat, and I'm going to be going over again eBay's international shipping program. And I had someone that reached out to me several weeks ago about how to turn on and set up international shipping over on Etsy. So we'll take a quick look at that as well. And of course, just have a discussion about the world of reselling in general. As always, thanks again for spending a little time. And now it's time to sell. Thanks, guys. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.